Hey, it's Manu with 22 Sound, and this is the first episode of our new little series here on our YouTube channel that we for now call Treasures from the Record Bins. We might change the name, who knows? I don't know. Maybe we'll come up with something better over time, but who cares about the name? It's the content that counts, and what we want to do here is basically the opposite of our other weekly series that we have, in which we talk about the highlights of each new vinyl release week. So we mainly talk about new music there because we love discovering new music and there is so much out there. But of course, part of the fun of going to a record store is digging through the bins and finding those old treasures. And especially for us on this side of the counter, a big part of the fun is to get those record collections in, and we get collections all the time. And discovering some old stuff that's new to us. So, or sometimes we see stuff that we just haven't seen in a long time, and it's really exciting to actually have that back in the store. And yeah, definitely I'm the first one to admit I don't know everything. I'm still discovering music every day, and it is one of the funnest things about doing this. So in this little series, what we want to do is just point out some records that are noteworthy for some reason. Maybe really rare records, maybe they're just really good records that we think didn't get the attention that they deserve, or maybe they're just flat out weird records. So I just want to have a little fun keeping this pretty open here and see where this leads us. So we're starting with this thing. Thrillington. Percy Thrills Thrillington released this record in 1977, and it is a cover version, an instrumental cover version of Paul McCartney's album Ram. Now, of course, all the Beatlemaniacs know this was actually Paul McCartney, but at the time that he kept that a secret and released this thing under this interesting name with this really cool cover, I gotta say. And yeah, it was recorded in 1972, but then not released for another 5 years. And then another 12 years later, Paul admitted that it was actually him all along. But yeah, what really makes me wonder is what was he thinking? I mean, what was the purpose of this? I guess a lot of Paul McCartney fans have wondered that over the years. It is kind of fun to listen to. It's kind of like a big band, easy listening version of Ram. But yeah, I guess if you're Paul McCartney in the early 70s, you just broke up the biggest band in the world. You made millions. You're super famous. You revolutionized the music world. What do? You can do pretty much anything you want, so yeah, why not do a big band version of your own album and release it under a different name with a ram head on the cover? It's amazing. I really think that's a fun little part of Beatles history. Thrillington. Yeah, next up is a band that I think should have been bigger. Widowmaker, Too Late to Cry. Yeah, I'm a rock guy, I gotta admit. I like a lot of different styles, but really my heart has always belonged to rock music. And, you know, it's a big family tree. It's heavier incarnations later on as well. But one of the really fun things about going through these record collections is when I find some bands, some rock bands that I wasn't aware of. I never really, might have heard the name, but never really listened to them. And so this is one of those bands, I gotta admit. They were like an early super group. Had members of bands like Spooky Tooth, Matt the Hoople, Hawkwind, Rainbow. Yeah, the bass player even ended up playing in Ozzy Osbourne's band later on. So really kind of a super group. They released this on Chet Records, which was Don Arden's label, who is, of course, Sharon Osbourne's dad, and also commonly known as a pretty big asshole. I don't know the guy, but that's what most people say about him. Well, these guys were a little bit of a train wreck too, apparently. They only lasted for 2 records. There's a lot of chaos around this band. They actually had a different lead singer for this one than on the first album, but they really make great music. This is like on the heavier end of the spectrum of classic rock, of 70s rock. And of course the word heavy meant something different than it means today. What was then considered heavy, I guess, wouldn't be considered super heavy these days, but definitely a little bit on that raunchier side of the spectrum, but also has some really bluesy moments on here. Really cool. If you like that, Led Zeppelin, like those big heavy rock bands from the 70s, check those guys out if you don't know them already. And I mean, look at the album cover. That's another part of the fun. I guess it's a little bit of a lost art, like just going by the album cover, just digging through the bins and picking something up just because the cover looks cool. I gotta say, the success rate is actually pretty big. And it is just one of those things I love, just going through collection and seeing something like that and putting it on and be blown away. Really cool band, Widowmaker, Too Late to Cry. And then for the third record today, had to put, of course, for this first episode, a New Orleans connection here. We are a store here right outside of New Orleans. You might be able to tell by my accent that I'm not actually from here, but I've been here for a long time now, and I gotta say, in the end, it was music that brought me here. One of the reasons I even visited New Orleans in the first place was because, of course, that was my association with New Orleans. I needed to see this place that is such a great music city that has birthed so many different music styles. And, well, don't want to bore you with the story, but ended up getting stuck here thanks to my wife. But anyway, the Meters, of course, one of the biggest or most legendary New Orleans bands. They were, to many people, or many people will consider them some of the founding fathers of funk. And but they never really, they were critically really well acclaimed, but they never really had the sales numbers to match their influence, which is kind of a sad thing. But the cool thing is they're still really highly praised still to this day, and definitely in New Orleans they're absolute legends. So one thing that's cool about this record, actually kind of odd in a way about this record, is the first song is a straight up disco song, basically. And it's not subtle at all. They actually call the song Disco Is the Thing Today. And that really makes me think, things like that kind of remind you how big disco was at the time, that bands like this really just went ahead and had a disco song on their album. We talked about, on our Instagram and Facebook, we always put out a record of the day. The other day we were talking about ELO's Out of the Blue. They had some disco parts in their big progressive rock band. All of a sudden having some disco beats in their music. Of course, Kiss famously had a disco song, but it really shows how big disco actually was for that little moment in time. But don't worry, the rest of it is, the funk, R&B, soul kind of mix that you would expect from the Meters. A really great album. If you don't know them yet, you should definitely check them out. They were really important in the early days of funk, and they really rocked. Great band. All right, that was the first episode here. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. And yeah, want to just kind of play around with this format here, and besides showing you the new stuff that's coming out, also kind of let you see the bins here, or like the highlights, the cool little things that we have here at the store, and that makes record collecting so much fun. Thanks for watching.